Ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Amir. Now, Doctor, we're talking about one of the main phrases or main issues and files has been sustainable development. Now, Egypt has its own vision for achieving sustainable development goals by 2030.
Yes.
The whole of the African continent is, the goal is for 2063. Now, we are following and closely watching and monitoring the fast pace of reaching that goal for 2030. But what about the rest of the African states? What about the rest of the African continent? How fast or how much is being achieved towards reaching that 2063 goal of achieving sustainable development?
I think that time will impose and circumstances will impose a sooner timetable.
Mm-hmm.
As I remember always, President Sisi, when we had something, project in Egypt, and he asked, it will take, he asked the specialists to take some, the timetable, and he responds in 1 year, 12 months. He say, no, give it 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the same thing, because this is how now the world is going. Things are going very rapidly, it's quickly. So I think that by the time there will be 2063, I think many circumstances would have been forced the African countries to work on the sustainable development. They will work with private corporations. They will change their way of thinking. Such forums, I think that they will change the mentality of the youth 180 degrees. It will change them and transform them, because they will go back to their countries and they will say, well, I think that there is something else that we could do to find a solution for my country's problems. Why this forum was done is to introduce the young people to solutions in their own countries. And this is what Africa would, this is the fate of Africa. Sooner or later, and I think it will be sooner than 2063, things will change, because what happened was the pandemic changed Europe, and I think it made a huge confusion now in Europe about merchandise, about economics, about everything now. And depending on Europe, it's not like before. There is new emerging countries working in the land of Africa, like China, like Russia, emerging superpowers inside the continent, like Egypt. So the world is changing. So I think that sooner or later, the African nations will work to find projects like solar system projects, agriculture projects, because Europe won't be like it was before. And Europe won't be also capable of expanding its, let's say, investment, because they are also in economic crisis. And what we are offering countries like Egypt, like Russia, like China, is cheaper projects, and it will give also an opportunity for the locals to work. And it's obvious that the young people, this is what we saw in Sharm El Sheikh, that the young people are eager, really, they were very happy that they could have a place to sit and talk and discuss and act as they were the detainers of their own future. And so that's why I'm very optimistic about the timetable.
Yes. Well, many conferences during the World Youth Forum as well dealt with the issue of climate change. Now, President Sisi said that even though Africa is one of the least places that was responsible for the carbon emissions, it pays the highest price among all the other continents. Now, there are 2 points of view regarding dealing with climate change, Africa dealing with the climate change. Dealing with climate change requires to decrease your carbon emissions footprint and a lot of use of renewable and alternative sources of energy. Now that needs a lot of financing that maybe Africa is struggling with. But at the same time, Africa is very rich in its own natural resources, being solar energy and water resources as well. So do you feel Africa would find it difficult to deal with climate change or really decreasing its carbon footprint and maybe using other alternative methods of energy?
Well, Egypt was the pioneer in all that. We started with the gas cars now and electric cars. I think that we have the solar energy. As you said, we have in Africa, we have all these capabilities and we could use it. So it would be very easy. And I insist on the point that the circumstances will force the people in the African countries to work according to the plans of using the natural resources. And this is a fact that the young people now are aware of. They know that, for example, the deforestation that was taking place, cutting the trees in the Amazon, for example, was a huge historical mistake. They started it in Africa and then now it's getting slowly. There is this, I'm amazed, for example, when I see videos about the natural reserves in Africa, how the locals now understand they have to preserve the natural resources, preserve the animals, preserve the trees. They have to keep this environment. And if it won't be like that, it will be devastating, like it happened with the tribes of the Amazons in South America. So I think they will have the same fate if they will neglect all that. So I think that using the natural resources, we have created in Egypt, for example, the most grandiose, I said, solar system projects. And President Sisi said he was very proud to see it from the plane, how it was covering a huge part in the desert. And I think this would be implemented everywhere in Africa because now the big industries, car industries, are trying now to, in Europe, to go in the line of electric cars, of the gas cars, and they're abandoning now the traditional fuel. So, as I said, circumstances will force the situation, and the leaders in Africa will have to listen to these demands from the youth, because they know that now there is no solution by telling them, well, immigrate to Europe. No, they will stay there. So they have to listen to them.
Dr. Amir, one final question now, talking about the climate change. Egypt will be hosting the COP27 climate change conference in the same city of Sharm El Sheikh. Now, this is a great honor and a great responsibility for Egypt, but what sort of hopes do you have for such a summit to not just have on Egypt or provide Egypt, but also provide the rest of the African continent and the whole world? It's one of the biggest, it's the biggest climate change conference.
I think it's an honor for the history, the modern history of Egypt, that such, let's say, world leaders gathering would happen in Egypt, because everyone knew what Egypt went through, and especially in Sinai. Everyone knows how it was really difficult to work to ensure security and to ensure also the economic readiness to host any events. So I think it's very, very important to work through the media worldwide and through our embassies by reassuring people outside that Egypt now is the citadel of peace, of investment, of cooperation, of prosperity. It's a country who rose from its difficulties. We went through real difficult situations this nation went through real difficult situation, and by the work of its leadership, change was there.
Yes.
So I'm very optimistic, and Egypt is bright and shining now.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, last week's World Youth Forum proved to be a huge success, and still another forums will be held later on, also the COP27. A lot of things to really wait for and look forward to. And we're going to be focusing on many of the resolutions and recommendations of the World Youth Forum in the coming days. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Cherif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.